last couple times I have seen you were like these like virtual things, and that's just
Yeah.
because we've been dealing with everything for the last 2 years of just kind of
Yeah.
trying to navigate like, well, how do you do stuff as a creative, because there's a lot of times where it's just like, well, what we do kind of involves people and we probably shouldn't be around people. So we did do, I feel like, some stuff with the Valkyrie Collective,
Yeah.
and you
Yes.
have been on this show
Yeah.
once before, and now you're back again. So thank you for coming back on the show
Yeah.
again.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I figure, let's see, after this song, I'm going to be
Which I
doing
love.
good, good. I'm going to be doing like the local calendar. So I figure we can kind of talk about the single release show. It seems like a good
Awesome.
time to do that. And then, of
Sure.
course, we can talk about the new single as much as we want. Just kind of letting you in on where we are in the program, I guess.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of what's going on. But if there's anything you would specifically like to talk about or not talk about, that's
Mm,
fine. Like, I don't.
okay.
But
Yeah.
we can
I'm
always work that into conversation. You know.
great. Yeah. I don't really have anything I don't want to talk about. I'm just open to hanging out with you and seeing what happens.
Sure, sure. I guess mainly, I don't know if we'll have time to talk about this on the radio, but mainly curious about some of like the full moon gatherings that you've been hosting. And
Oh,
I
yes.
don't know, like that's the kind of thing where it's just like, hey, would love to talk about this any other time, but let's keep it to the
Right.
single release. But like I've always just been kind of curious about these gatherings, mainly because like I have floated in and out of that world, both like your online community, but also that community at large for like
Yeah.
so long. And I just kind of
Yeah.
have some questions about it, mainly because
I
it's,
love that.
well, like for me, I feel like sometimes maybe the only way for me to keep up a practice is to like have an excuse to do it.
Yeah.
And I guess
Absolutely.
I wonder, like, is this I don't want to be presumptuous, but like, is this
Mm.
a way for you to kind of like stay true to that? Because I know on the one sheet you were kind of hinting at well, one, like Celtic roots, but also like some of the literature in the groups kind of hints at some other Celtic traditions in these groups. So it's like for me, where it's just like, oh, like it seems like you're trying to get in touch with this, and for me, like I almost feel like it's such a personal thing that like people are always like, oh, well, there's this group, and I'm just like, yeah, yeah, like like it's almost like a bit, like someone's like telling you all the great things, but like because it's so personal, like in your head, you're like, yeah, that's great. I'm never gonna go to this.
Yeah.
Dude.
I
And it's like
totally
so
get
for
that.
me, I kind of fall off the horse pretty easily on like or lose directions on where I even want to take it. And it's just like, is that your way of kind of like giving it a routine to connect with it? Or was this like kind of spawned out of a path of like rediscovery where it's like, oh, this is what I gotta do now?
I love it. I love these questions. I feel seen. Thank you, Doc. Um, I think the last time I was on the show with you was releasing Under the Moon, which was a single that came out,
Right.
which is all about
What
these
yeah, sorry.
gatherings. Oh yeah,
Yeah. I was just like, was that like 2 years ago? Please tell me
yeah.
was that. Oh my
Yeah, I
god.
think it was. I think it was yeah, it was 2021. And that was like the first time where I really just I've been working with the moon cycle for 10 years, and it
Yeah.
is absolutely a reason. And with astrology, just as a practice of of self-awareness and like
Right.
figuring out, just because I want to grow, because I feel like we're all here to
Yes.
grow, right? That's the whole point.
Yes.
So working with the new moon and the full moon has always been something that I have done on my own. And then I
Right.
found a group of primarily women, but some men who would gather, and we would just hold space for each other and witness each other. And sometimes people would come and they just wanted to, participate in the meditation and do their own internal
Oh,
journaling and not have to say a thing.
I
Um,
like that. Hold that thought because we're about
yeah.
to go on the air here.
Okay.
So we just heard from Flock of Dimes, Madison Cunningham from the new Grammy award-winning album Revealer, and Lucius at the top of that set. And if you're just tuning in, we've been talking with Annie Fitzgerald online, and right now, Annie Fitzgerald joins me here with me, or at least hopefully. Can you still hear me, Annie?
I can. Hi, Doc.
Yes. Okay, I can hear you as well. Okay, so we have a list of shows to talk about, and one of them is yours. So I will let you do the heavy lifting on your show, but let's talk about some things that are happening tonight and tomorrow before we get there. Tonight, Goodbye Mordecai, Tim is a Rocker, Butter Boys, and Bird Hole, all at 7th Street Entry, starting at 7 p.m. Thursday, tomorrow night, Mikkel Beckman and Mike Munson at the Dubliner. This is a great show. And after that show's over, you can check out Pop Wagner Thursdays, every Thursday at Midway Saloon. I might have flipped that. You could probably catch Pop first and then go to the Dubliner and check out Mikkel and Mike on Thursday. Friday, Big Turn Music Fest starts. We also have Bethany Larson and the Bee's Knees, Courtney Yasmine, Boots and Needles, all at the 331 Club on Friday. And Faux release show at KJ's Hideaway. So Big Turn is going to continue into Saturday. Wayward's release show. We talked to Wayward last week, but also Annie Fitzgerald's single release show at the UBC Root Cellar. We're going to let Annie talk about that. So let me just finish, because Sunday we have Goat's Kitchen, Goat Roper, and Jackson Atkins at Mortimer's. And then on Monday, Shrimp Olympics, Din Din, Fletcher Cooley, RRA at Memory Lanes. So glad Memory Lanes is doing punk rock bowling again. And then, of course, Taylor James Tonsky is who we talked to at the top of this month. Is doing a residency for his new record at the 331 every Tuesday. Think I missed something, or you just want me to hear hear me mispronounce your band name on the air, just email it to Desert Islands KFAI at gmail.com. I curate that whole list from the stuff you send me, so please keep sending me things. Okay, speaking of things, Annie, you have a pretty cool thing happening this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. Saturday is your release show. So let's talk about where this is and who's playing with you first. Just
Yeah.
because I'm actually not quite familiar with this venue, and I'm excited to
Yes.
talk.
Yes. So the UBC Root Cellar concert series, I believe it's been going on for a few years. This show,
Mhm.
I had initially booked with him for March 22nd of 2020. And
Okay.
so it's happening now, and they have been just lovely to work with. They bring in singer songwriters from this community, and it is in the basement of the University Baptist Church in Dinkytown. So that's where the actual venue is. Um, yeah, and I'm just really excited. I haven't played a show for a while. I've been really focused on my sound therapy work, so I'm excited to. I've actually been getting a little bit emotional as I've grabbed my guitars for this to practice and kind of get ready. But I'm going to be joined by my friend and producer Matt Patrick, who produced and played on Ankara, the new single that we're celebrating, as well as David Gerald Sutton, who is an absolutely incredible string player who also played on Ankara as well. So we're going
Yes,
to
they are.
do a
They are
trio. They are incredible. They are
Yeah.
so incredible. They blew me away walking in, and they put, they played on two singles, one to be released, and then this one in 2 hours. There was an incredible string arrangement
Yeah.
on it. So, and
Also,
they're
I feel like
beautiful humans.
anything coming out of Matt Patrick's studio has been
Yes.
fantastic. I feel like
Yeah.
anything made at the library is going to be made really well.
Yes.
So this single is no exception. This thing sounds great.
Thank
And
you.
let's talk about, well, let's listen to it, and then we can talk about it all we want, because we're already 15 minutes into this hour, and I want to give this song its due. So follow us off mic if you want to hang out with us and hear what we're talking about, mainly because I'm a talker and we might go to some interesting places. But if you like what you hear, stay tuned, because we're talking with Annie Fitzgerald here on Desert Islands. Today's mixtape is for Annie Fitzgerald, but let's actually listen to some Annie Fitzgerald. Here is the new single, Anam here on Desert Islands. Can you still hear me?
I sure can.
Okay. Yeah, it's so I love that idea for a group, mainly because like when I kind of started getting into this, it was like just kind of like various places to put your toe in the water, and I think like
Yeah.
one of them is definitely like tarot, which is like I feel like if anything, I think a lot of people associate it with like, well, like, oh, give me a reading, when I think like it kind of functions as your own, and this is not a substitute for therapy, but like it kind of is like your own psychiatrist in a weird way. Like it's like kind of there to read you more than anything
Yeah.
else. And
Yeah.
not to say that you should use this to avoid therapy, because that is also a useful tool if you have
I
the
second
resources.
that.
Uh,
Second that.
but like this is the kind of thing that prompted a lot of self-analysis and a lot of like, oh, I don't want to just survive. I want to actually thrive, but I actually want to like grow and actually learn things. And like this is kind of one of the places where it started. But there's also like this weird pressure, I think, in a lot of groups when you go down this road, because it's like either like you go into this place and it's just like you get a bunch of people who are like, you should like, am I joining the Masons, what's going on here? Or like almost like too like woo woo for me, and like I like that stuff, but it's like
Mm-hmm.
almost too like, all right, what are we really doing here, folks? So it's like it's always hard for me to actually, one, talk about, but two, like find anywhere to like gather and do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So
so it's like
I
I
actually, yeah,
yeah,
I agree with everything you're saying. And I think that, stepping into a new community of any sort can be intimidating, right?
mhm,
Because you don't really know what you're gonna get. I feel
absolutely.
really fortunate. I've been hosting something called Full Moon Magic, where I out of Collective Dimensions in Crystal, where I have my sound therapy practice out of, and it's with my partner, business partner, and friend Marion, and we kind of combine the two of our gifts, and we're both really we really love to hold space for people in a meaningful way. And so I kind of talk about the astrology around the moon. So new moons are for times for planting seeds and intentions, and full
Yeah,
moons are usually a time of release and letting go. So what we do is I talk about the astrology. We prepare journal prompts and things around that for each person, and we do introspective work in the same room. And then there's always usually a sound and meditation to kind of sink deeper into that. And then we do a meaningful ritual together based upon the energies that are happening. And there are share times that are present and there for people if they want to. But a lot of times, like I was saying before, people come to explore the energy together. And there's something about, as we all know, as musicians as well, something about being in a room with people,
Yeah,
and feeling into all of that. So we always, I always say too, with all of the energy and everything, take what you need and what resonates and leave the rest, because it's not going to resonate with everybody in the same way, which
right,
is also beautiful because you can learn from each other in
right,
that
right.
way.
And it's
Yeah.
I love that idea of uh the reaping and sowing based off of the new and full moon,
Yeah.
just because like
Yeah.
it's funny because like I know it's very easy to like immediately shrug off astrology, but like there's so many things that are just like, okay, well, like if it isn't a thing, then how come, like, and you said as musicians, like you notice there's like something about like gathering with a group of people, but also as musicians and as someone who works in events, like there is something about the energy of full moon breaks. I
Oh,
don't know
yeah.
what it is, but like talk to every bartender friend you've ever met where it's just like, oh great, it's a full moon tonight. Like
Yeah. Or healthcare workers, right?
yeah, the energy is
Yeah.
definitely a little bit different. And I love the idea of intentionally kind of, if not meeting as a group, like kind of meeting with yourself, just because
Yourself.
like I've definitely noticed like I get more energy around the new moons, and then like
Hmm.
I feel like the full moons always take so much out of me where I'm just
Hmm.
like
There, yeah.
like especially lately I've just been like can we just, whatever it is, can we just not?
Yeah, I feel
Whatever
you. I feel you.
it is.
I do. I feel you. We're heading into a really beautiful new moon in Pisces happening this weekend. And I think it's going to be really, really beautiful in the fact that we're going to be kind of tying up some loose ends and things in this really
Yeah,
dreamy sort of magical way where we're making space for what's to come. So yeah,
yeah.
I think it's going to be energizing. It's going to feel good.
Yeah, I had a really interesting encounter a few years back. This was like 2015,
Hmm.
and it was my friend who used to be like an active magician, and then COVID hit, but like he was like really into this stuff, and he would always uh like astrology, like even tying that to like Nostradamus stuff. Like he was into like
Ooh,
really like into that stuff. And I don't know about the future telling thing.
yeah,
I'm
me
just
either.
interested in it because like whenever someone I meet is like, Frank wasn't the kind of person where it's just like, oh no, this is my hobby. Like he was almost like the type of person where it's just like, oh no, like have you read these books? I mean, like it's in this. It's like here are the chart. Like he like had like sources like handy. So I was like, all right,
Right.
I'll go down this rabbit hole with you, Frank. Like tell me.
Yeah.
And it was like this whole thing on like, well, Pluto's about to enter Capricorn, so like just buckle up for a. And this was like this is like in 2015. He's like, yeah, so just buckle up for like a good 8 years, because
It's entering Aquarius like this next year for some months, and it's going to give us a taste, and then it's going to be there for 20 years
yeah,
in
yeah,
the
and
sign of the
it's
collective, which is kind of beautiful
yeah,
because we
and
need to change some stuff up.
that's basically kind of what he said, of just like it's like every time the stars have been in this position, like, and he like went back, it's like this is when the Industrial Revolution happened, this is when one of the Crusades happened, this is what, so like every time, and it's just like anytime society needs something like dramatically shaken up, this is happening celestially. And guess what has been happening pretty much from this time and will be until, and we're coming to the end of it. So it's like,
Yeah.
for me, it's just funny when people are like, ha, you actually believe in that? I'm like, yeah, yeah,
There's something to be, and it's okay because everyone can believe in whatever they want to.
right.
And honestly, if you use astrology as a tool for self-discovery, which I do, it's been super helpful for me. And just as
Yeah,
a side note, the last time Pluto was in Aquarius, which it will be not this year, but next year for the next 20 years, was the same time the French Revolution and the American Revolution happened. Like, it's going to shake some stuff up, but we need to shake some stuff up. And who knows how that's going to play out,
Right.
because things are going to
Right.
get shook up either way, whether it's about the astrology
Yeah.
or
Well,
not.
that's definitely true, because like I think like there's definitely this whole thing where I think people are like, oh no, like this stuff isn't gonna affect me. It's just like, no, it's all whether we like it or not. Like there's a lot of weird stuff coming down the pike. There's also a lot of like cool things coming down the pike.
Amazing things. Yes.
Um, but
Yes.
like I think there's a lot of things that are you can't really blame the user. You can't really blame the tool. You have to blame the user. And there's a lot of tools that I don't know if we are ready for physically or spiritually coming down the pike, is kind of what I'm worried about. Of just like, whoa, we still have a hard time like with the fact that some of us come in slightly different colors.
Right.
You let alone we
Yep.
have like these like 4 superpowers working on artificial intelligence. And I've
Yeah.
seen way too many sci-fi movies to like figure out like, okay, what happens when the AI starts talking with each other? And then like all the AIs that like the ones that like these superpowers are kind of talking with, it's just like, hey, what are they saying to you? Because like, okay, I'm starting to have doubts on this whole species we're working with. Like that's kind of what I'm worried about.
I go like this when you start talking about that. Like,
Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly.
I like to try to stay as present as possible. Like, I want to
Yeah,
try to
and I
stay as
think
present as possible.
that's all we can do. And I think these tools are great. I think people misinterpret them as like this weird, like, oh, like no, like I'm going to use this to get rich or predict the future. It's like in reality, I think it's like there to help you see the forest through the trees.
Yeah.
Where it's just like,
Yeah.
oh, it's like this is the kind of stuff where it's just like, oh, all of a sudden a path is kind of in front of me that I was already walking, but now I can kind of see where I should be going and that
Yeah.
kind of thing. So we're gonna be coming back. I gotta play some underwriting cards, so
Yes.
stand by
Okay.
for that. Uh,
Programming on KFAI is supported in part by Minnesotans for a Smoke-Free Generation. According to government studies, menthol flavoring is used to target Black people, American Indians, members of the
And then I think
LGBTQ
I only have one
community,
more
and young
song
adults.
from your Desert Island
Menthol
list, so I'm
leaves
gonna
feel
try
and harder to stop
to
smoking.
get through it. Just gonna do a set of local
Smoke-Free
music
Generation.
Awesome.
first.
Thanks for doing all that you do, Doc. You're awesome.
So thanks for coming on the show.
Dangers of flavored tobacco
Stand by.
products.
We're about to come
Flavors,
back here.
bookkidsmn.org.
So that was a new song by Tacklebox called Satellite Farmer. We also had Your Internet Sucks by Burr and Anamkara by Annie Fitzgerald. Who I'm speaking with right now here on Desert Islands, the show where I make mixtapes based on my guest 10 records they bring to a desert island. We've heard 9 of those records so far. We're going to get back to that list. I have some more local music, some of which was actually featured in some of those articles that you have been featured in. So congrats on that. This single is generating some attention. So if folks like what they heard, Annie, where can they hear it again? Where's the best place for them to get their hands on your new single?
Yeah, I all the things can be found at anniefitzgerald.com. Anamkara is streaming on all of the streaming sites, and if you want to support me specifically, it's available for purchase on Bandcamp. So it's under my name.
Yeah. So you had the single release show this weekend, and you had this kind of planned for a while, and then stuff happens. So let's talk about plans for post-release. Do you have any concerts on the books after this, in case folks, hear this after the fact and,
Yeah.
miss out on this weekend, but want to stay in touch with what you are doing?
Yeah. The best way to stay in touch is to pop over to anniefitzgerald.com and just join the mailing list. I usually send out like a monthly thing, kind of giving you an overview of things that are happening. I do have two other singles that are in the hopper that I'm not sure when are going to be released. I'm still trying to figure out a plan. When I have this seller show on the books, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna. It's around Valentine's Day. Anamkara it means soul friend in Gaelic, so I'm like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
release this now. I don't really have a ton on the books until May, and then things start picking up again over the summer. But hopefully a couple more singles will be coming out, at least one between then and now. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, it sounds great.
thank
Everything, the
you,
textures on this thing sound enormous.
thank
So
you.
check out Annie Fitzgerald's new music. More is on the way, but Adam Cara is available now. So speaking of stuff that is also available now, we have new 26 Bats, which just kind of sneakily came out. They just dropped it last week on their social media. So let's listen to Blue here on KFAI. Deep Blue, sorry.
I love it.
I'm not despite me trying to caffeinate, I don't think it's fully working.
Okay,
Uh,
I'm still drinking coffee too, Doc. I'm still drinking coffee too.
well, I have noticed I think ever since getting COVID, my 100% is like my old 85 to 90%.
Hmm.
Like I've just always like I'm just getting tired easier. I can still do all the same things. It's just like the battery just depletes a little bit quicker. And that
I
also
get
could
that. I'm
be
sorry.
getting, but like I've also heard like the Omicron variants just kind of accelerate that process of getting older a little bit, where it's just like, oh, that's
Mm,
probably what that is. Um,
yeah.
but yeah, it's just yeah,
I
yeah, and I
also wonder. Oh, sorry, Doc. Go ahead. I didn't
no,
mean
go
to
for it.
interrupt you. I was just gonna say. I also wonder if, like, all the things we went through, even without the COVID piece, didn't do some of that. You know?
Oh yeah. Like I think by and large, I feel like we have been through a lot, and a lot of the a lot we've been going through, I think still has roots on unprocessed trauma from, like, and it's I get it, like, because especially we've been talking about astrology for like the past, like 15-ish minutes. I get like people don't want to hear, like it's just like, well, like look into like epigenetic research. Like if you are like a strict materialist, I get it. I'm not here to like convert you, man. It's
Yeah.
like that joke, like why didn't the lifeguard save the hippie? Because he was too far out, man. Uh, like I get it if this is not for you, but there are actual, materialistic hard science, like not the social sciences. There are like hard sciences that have discovered like ancestral trauma is like handed down through the genes, and like through like
One
it's
thousand percent.
so like I do think we are still processing the Civil War. We are still processing World War II. Like, and like all these like big movements we've had socially from like 1960 to present, I still think are like reactions to how we processed these big traumas, and like not fully, like we kind of, I think we did our best as a species, but like there was kind of a healthy amount of just like sweeping under the rug of
Hmm.
just, like, nope, we dealt with it and we're just not going to deal with it again. Like that's
Right.
kind of
Right.
how It's just like, yeah, but what about this? I said, we're not dealing with it again. It's just like, yeah, but we're not. So like, I think there's a lot of that. And I think on the micro level, you're absolutely right. The past 2 years, like, I think a lot of health issues, both mental and physical, are kind of stemming from like a lot of the stuff of just like, no, we're okay. We're okay. We're just walking that
Yeah.
off. We're just walking that off.
100%,
It's fine. It's fine. But like, well, why, if we still are going through that, why am I going out with friends next weekend? Huh? How come everything's back to normal? Just like the pressure to just keep the wheels turning.
I'm feeling that more and more this year too.
Yeah.
It's just which I get, and to a certain extent, we have to, but yeah, it's kind of confusing.
That is also like, because you also don't want to teeter into the universe of toxic positivity as well, because there also is like the simple matter of a fact, like some people are in this position because that's how they make ends meet. Like they are just dealt a rough hand, and they have to work another job to make sure stuff keeps going out on time and food keeps getting on the table. And you can't really say some of the like, oh, just smile more to folks like that, because it's just like, no, you're literally already doing everything you need to be doing. Like sometimes just acknowledging that that's a lot and it's really hard is like
Right.
more important than going like, no, let's not focus on that because that sounds really negative and I don't want to feel that because I'm an empath. So let's like I think there's like a lot of that like memory erasure. Like, so it's just like, I'm not saying like, oh yeah, easy for you to say. It's just like, no, like if you're going through that, it's completely valid to feel that
Of
way.
course.
And
Absolutely.
you need to take care of those things. And if you feel like, oh, I never have time because I'm always doing these things, it's like, well, it's probably the truth at this point, but you still need to do those things. And I'm rooting for you.
Totally. Totally.
At this point, I think I'm talking to myself, but I just hearing you say that, like, I'm kind of like feeling that response to the rat race, like, just,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I feel you, Doc. I do.
But speaking of the rat race, are you doing the full band with the performance this weekend? I don't know if we mentioned that actually.
Nope, we're not. We're just doing we're doing a trio. So Matt Patrick on bass and myself Matt Patrick's playing electric and then I'm playing acoustic and David Gerald Sutton is going to be joining us on bass.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so it's going to be a stripped down version of songs, but that felt like the right way to go.
Yeah,
So.
I mean, they're also both really good players. I feel like if people haven't seen David Sutton's solo stuff, like what they do is really interesting, but also like what Matt Patrick does, I feel like he always makes a positive contribution to something he works on.
Always. Yes, I feel very supported and held, and I haven't even had rehearsal. That's tomorrow night, so it's gonna be really beautiful to be able to gather and share and just play. I think I had mentioned before that I have been picking up my guitar, and my guitars have not been getting enough love because I've been playing lots and lots of other instruments. But yeah, I've gotten a little bit emotional because as a songwriter, how you pull out, because I'm pulling out a bunch of different things from my catalog for the show. And, songs that I wrote a really long time ago and how they're still totally a part of me and in my heart, but how the meaning has changed now because enough time has gone by and all the things. So many of those things are coming up. So I think it's going to be emotional in a really beautiful way. So
I think like the way time passes, it's really interesting how it's like it definitely feels linear, but it's almost kind of like a spiral staircase.
Yes.
Like you're going in that direction, but you're definitely circling back to a lot of things, and sometimes
Absolutely.
it's like the what's the Mark Twain quote? It's like history doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. Like I feel like
Yes,
you constantly return to like certain themes in your own life, and
for sure. For
so what
sure.
is it like revisiting stuff like that? Like, do you find that you're like, oh, maybe we should start playing this one more, or maybe it's time to like move on from like do you get any of those emotions with your old material, or do you feel pretty close?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. I think the biggest thing for me, well, there's two things that have been really big. There's a song that is on my first record that I did with Matt Patrick at the library called Little Girl, and it's all about speaking to that inner child. And I can
Yeah,
feel myself speaking to myself, but I also now have a 10-year-old who, I'm like, and
yeah.
I get a little bit teary, like I'm holding back tears a little bit right now, just thinking about, saying those words to him. And then the other thing that's really interesting is how I wrote songs when I was in a place in a space where I was writing to my future self and I didn't even know it yet. And I was writing to
Oh,
my
sure.
future and how my future would actually turn out based on relationships and things. And I wasn't even aware. My bandmates, when we made You and Me in the Sun, were very aware of what was going on with me when they listened to the song,
Yeah,
but I
yeah, yeah,
wasn't.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, it just speaks to the way that, songwriting and art and all the things really just heal ourselves, and then we put it out there and it can maybe touch other
Oh,
people's hearts and things. But
absolutely.
that's wild.
It's why I encourage everyone to make their own art,
Yeah.
because it's a lot like well, any other practice, like especially we were talking about the spiritual side and the astrological side, but like also like
Hmm.
if you do yoga, sometimes like just the process is like actually where you learn about yourself, and there's not really
Absolutely.
like these endpoints don't really mean anything, and that's kind of a hard pill
No.
to swallow. Like, and it's just like
Hmm.
it. So we are talking with Annie Fitzgerald here on Desert Islands. We heard some local music, Thomas Saban, Zina, and we also had the new 26 Bats at the top of that set. So we're gonna keep going with some like Minnesota music, just because the last record you had on your list was from John Mark Nelson. So I want to get some people that I thought kind of had a similar vibe, but also, we're a little bit regionally related with some Wisconsin and greater Minnesota vibes. So let's get things started with the Cactus Blossoms here on Desert Islands. I am making a mixtape for Annie Fitzgerald today, and if you're interested in what we're talking about off mic, please stop by. We are streaming until noon. So if you feel like you want to rush to make it, don't worry about it. Please don't do so while you're driving. We are going to archive the video. You can watch it later. So stick around for that. Sorry, it didn't start, and I was like, why? Um, damn it, I lost my train of thought because I had a response to
We were
what.
talking about art. You were talking about it's
Yeah,
important for people to make their own art.
yeah. I think I'm in a spot right now too where like I'm kind of releasing something and I'm kind of falling into that trap again of just like, oh, this is why I do this. And it's just like, no, this is not, this is a part of why you do this. What makes this whole thing interesting is not the fact that uh, you're in a position where something you did is getting attention. and it's not about that, like, because I do, there was like some podcast I was listening to with David Nichtern, who's like he was like the podcast host, meditation teacher,
Yeah.
and he brought up this anecdote of this ice sculptor who was a student of his, and she was basically frustrated with herself because the event, I think it was a wedding, she had this ice sculpture, and the ice sculpture was kind of like designed to deteriorate in a way that was part of the art. So like the ice would start melting in a way that the sculpture would kind of evolve and
Mm,
like be a work of art itself, like it was almost
beautiful.
dancing now. But the event kept getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back, and this ice sculpture is just sitting out there, and she's watching it like unfurl perfectly to no one, and she was just
Right.
kind of like trying to cope with this whole like,
Mm,
I feel so selfish because no one was there to see it. And it's just like, okay, you got to go easy on yourself, because I do understand why, you want to shut down those emotions. But like, you also have to understand part of your journey was so other people could share in that experience.
mhm.
It wasn't a completely selfish act. Like, you were doing this and setting this up for the sake of other people.
The
Um,
whole point is to connect with each other. We're all here to
yeah,
connect with each other, and that's a beautiful, meaningful way that we can do it is through art and music and all the things,
exactly, exactly. And and
Hmm.
and while like I think with stuff like especially stuff in the press, like getting good press is nice. But also like it's just a reminder to like we'll keep doing it when you don't get good press,
Yes.
because the good press doesn't really like take it from someone who has been lucky enough to get good press. And you're probably like, well, that's easy for you to say. It's just like, okay, well,
Hmm.
if you and my bank account switch places, you might not be as excited to be me. Like, this stuff doesn't, like, while it's cool and amazing and I'm really grateful for it, it really only means something if like you were kind of like sticking true with your process. Because like if it's not really like part of your journey, like it's not the end all be all of anything. Like if something you do doesn't get press and you're really proud of it, and like you executed the concept to the best of your ability, like that's just as valid as being lucky enough to do something that gets talked about. But like, does the quality of something you do get better because someone was talking about it? Like it to me, it's just like, re-examine what you're actually doing it for. And I think when you're in that release process and like you just finished a thing, you're like immediately like, I don't want to do another thing. I just did a thing. Like, why?
Right. Right.
And I
Right. Right.
like, it is important to kind of uh, think of the next thing you're gonna do, because it's just like, well, what is it you're doing this for? And but there's also like seasonal, like winter is a really good thing for like this kind of, because there is that like release after something like this. I know we were talking about releases, but like there should be like a form of like, yeah, you're done for a little bit, like you're laying fallow, like that,
Hmm.
like you are reaping now. You sowed it, it germinated, it cultivated, now it's a thing, and now you
Kind
have
of
to
like the
harvest.
full moon cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of
So like
like the full moon cycle, new
there is a
moon. Yeah.
period where like you need to kind of go dark and like not.
Like the new moon. Oh my God, you're
Exactly,
all the
yes,
things right now, Doc.
exactly, exactly.
Hmm.
And it's hard for me to remind myself like of that, and I'm trying to remind myself even in times like this where it's just like, Oh yeah, I'm really lucky, but also like remember all the records you released that nobody talked about, and it's just like
Hmm.
I still remember having fun in those days. So
Yeah,
like,
I keep thinking about, as you're talking about this, I just had the conversation with my 10-year-old about friends and how if you have this many friends and you can count this many friends, you are so lucky. And if you have this many friends on both of
yeah,
your, like, that you are
yeah,
the luckiest person. And I sort of feel like if I have this many people whose heart was like deeply touched by something that I did,
yeah.
I'm winning,
Oh,
you know?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, it's
Yeah.
like I forget his name. I'm gonna have to
Look it up.
uh look it up because I have the thing in front of me. Oh, come on. What is your name? David Lowery, Camperbond,
Mm.
Beethoven, and Cracker. He had this great thing that I tell my students all the time, where it's like, okay, what is statistically the most famous record of all time? Michael Jackson's Thriller, just like 30 million, maybe 70 million copies. Okay, how many people are on the planet? 8 billion, and so that's not even 1% of the biggest thing of all time. Most of the people, it's not even like affected their lives. So like like if you're gonna play the comparison game, like remember, like even the biggest thing in the world is like it's not what you think it is. It's not that big.
Mm-hmm.
But like yeah, yeah, it's funny that it's like even if if affect this many people, and it's just like the whole time I was thinking about it's like even if you have this many friends, it's like now that I'm in my 30s, I'm just like I don't know if I want 10 friends. That's a lot of friends.
That's why I'm like, this is good. This is a good number.
This is a good. This is like a good thing to be in,
Mm.
But it's yeah. But yeah, I think like I think a lot of why I do art is kind of like I'm trying to make sense of the world for me.
Absolutely.
And there's a healthy amount of like I always liked how Mike Birbiglia called it like his stand-up sets like my secret public journal,
Oh,
because
I
like
love that.
yeah,
I love
because
that.
like, that's kind of how I feel as an artist, where it's just like like,
Hmm.
and especially for the press and stuff, where it's like, okay, cool, I'm glad that you like this, but I also have to remind myself like that's not what I'm doing it for. Like, what I'm doing it for is like I'm really trying to kind of get something off my chest, and sometimes I don't get it off my chest, and it's just like it's
Hmm.
like this weird thing of just like you're like I'm inviting you into my room. That's an intimate thing. Like not
Hmm.
everyone gets that, and that's kind of like what we all do this for. And there's like a really rich process that you can get out of this, especially if you're trying to like be an alchemist and create something from bad circumstances or something from nothing.
Yeah.
Stand by.
Yeah.
John Mark Nelson here on Desert Islands. And that actually, I believe, is number 10. 10 out of 10
Hmm.
from Annie Fitzgerald's Desert Islands picks list. We also had some J.E. Sunday and the Cactus Blossoms. J.E. has also been on the show, and his record has been doing some great things. So it's good to see J.E. doing well. Doing well. Speaking of doing well, Annie, you just released a great new single, and your release show is this weekend. Thank you so much for doing the show once
Hmm.
again.
Thank you
Really
for having
appreciate
me, Doc.
it. Yeah, no, thanks for coming out and thanks for hanging out. It's had a lot of fun. Is there anything you would like the listeners to know about before we get going here?
I don't think so. I just am grateful to connect. I'm grateful that Anamkara is out in the world. And if they want to connect with me, AnnieFitzgerald.com is the place to do it. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook and all the things.
There we go. There we go. Are tickets still available to the show? How do
Yes.
people get info on that as well? Because
Yes,
that's
if you go to, yep, it's coming up on Saturday at the UBC Root Cellar Concert Series. It's on Saturday, the 18th at 7 p.m., and tickets can be found on anniefitzgerald.com under the events tab. So, yeah,
sounds
I'd
good.
love to have you.
Well, next week I'm going to be speaking with Kevin Bowe of Kevin Bowe and the Okima Prophets. Kevin's got a new record coming out this year. We're going to be talking with him. Up next, we got Democracy Now! Annie Fitzgerald, thank you so much for coming back on the show. We're going to close things out with a track called It's Infinite by Lomelda here on Desert Islands. Woo! Yeah, I definitely had a tie-in that I can't remember, but that's okay.
Okay, no, it's totally okay. Totally okay. I'm just so grateful for all that you do for our community. It's
Appreciate
huge.
that.
Thank you.
No, thanks for taking notice. Just because I think another important thing for me to remember is, and this is something I try to tell my students, is like, take the work seriously, but don't take yourself too seriously. At the end of the day, like, we are pretty much theater kids going to rock star camp. Like, this
Totally.
this is not that
Yes.
big a deal. None of us are that big of a deal, but because it's all masks and pretend, it kind of is a big deal for us as like a thing, as a species moving forward. Like it is like, because there is this tradition of people like, oh, like, I have this thing and I took this and made something out of it and now I want to share it. Like, that tradition, be it like storytelling or visual art or music or just whatever, like, I think that is important, more important than whether or not, like, yeah, I guess, like, just don't worry about how many views you get on TikTok. Just worry about like actually making the stuff and continuing doing the stuff, just because I think we are learning, especially now, but like, we're learning like in real time. Social media like doesn't know what it's talking about. Doesn't matter if you're doing good numbers on social media. Like, most of that stuff is like, I don't know. I'm still unconvinced. Like, the heavy hitters aren't like, some of their numbers aren't bots as well. Like
It has
the
to be. I don't know. I just can't with it anymore.
oh yeah, well, like, there's like it's like, especially the concert ticket stuff. There's just some things where it's just like, that can't be possible. Like, but also, what do I know?
You know lots of things, Doc. You know lots of things. I also think too that, like, there's something to be said about our community here in the Twin Cities. I was just part of the '90s tribute show at the Turf last weekend.
Yeah, how'd that go?
It was so fun. It was so much fun. Zachary Scott Johnson is our fearless leader and puts it together beautifully. And the band was killer, and everybody, got up and sang a couple of '90s songs, and we relived them all together. And it was so wonderful to just witness everybody and their talents and their gifts, and just to be together in that space was just a reminder, I think, that I needed. Just to be grateful that we have such a beautiful community here. So many talented artists doing amazing things. And
it's easy to take for granted. I'm gonna slowly fade this out. It's very easy to take for granted. And I was talking to someone about this. Like, anytime you get frustrated with the scene, and it's easy to get frustrated with the scene, I think. reminder, just like a good reminder that like literally every scene is going through this, and I'm not saying this as like a because I definitely get the crowd where it's just like hey, it could be a whole lot worse. It's like, well, it could be a whole lot better, like
Right. Well, that too, for sure. Yeah.
and, but like I am only saying this as an independent artist where it's just like, okay, look, is my life glamorous? No, it's a lot of like hard grunt work. That being said, I've had a real job before I, lasted in the arts for, oh gosh, 15, 20 years. I had real jobs, and there's a reason the adage is it's nice work if you can get it. Like
Right.
compared to that, this ain't real. this ain't real work. Like, yes, it's a hard work, but like, so if you manage to find something where you can make some income out of it, like, don't take that for granted. But like,
For sure.
I have been on the road, and I know that there are a lot of wonderful communities in this country. Like, it's kind of easy to kind of talk trash on the United States just because it's almost like fashionable now. But like, there's like a lot of great places here, actually. But like the Twin Cities, especially, I don't think people realize how cool some of the stuff is going on until you leave and realize like there are communities that have killer music scenes that are begging for a KFAI, let
Yes.
alone a KMOJ, Radio K.
Yeah.
Like we have like 5 of them.
Yeah.
and
It's
like
amazing.
the Twin Cities aren't that big, like, and I, whenever I say that, people like get mad at me, like I'm making fun of the Twin Cities. I'm just like, no, like factually,
Yeah.
compared to the other population centers, like this is actually kind of a mid-size city. So the fact that we have all this stuff in a geographically inconvenient location is very remarkable. So like saying stuff like, yeah, like when tours skip us, it's because we're not that big of a market and we're really hard to get to. So the fact that we get all this crazy stuff is insane. Like there's like a lot of that comes into this. Like there's a lot of people going out of their way to do some cool stuff to make sure it happens. There's a lot of cool people in the Twin Cities doing their thing, and a lot of talented people as well.
Yeah.
Like that's another thing I've seen where it's like I've definitely played some stages where I'm just like, oh, I got to be on my game because they're the best, and then I was just like, I feel like my friends are just as good as these so-called hired guns. Like it's like there's a lot of talent here. But yeah, I don't know. I'm rambling, and Democracy Now! Is on, and we should probably wrap this up, even though I know there's still people watching. Thank you so much for continuing to watch After Hours. But Annie, thank you so much for coming on the show again. This is a lot of fun.
Thank you, Doc. That was a ton of fun.
Yeah. But now that we're over time, I gotta wrap it up. So good to see you. Enjoy the rest of your day. And
thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Doc.
I would be there this weekend, but I'm in Red Wing. So
oh yay. Have an awesome show. Have a great show.
Thank you. You as well. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, thanks, Doc.